Well, here is the big story from the aviation space, and I would have to say that this is a long-expected line. Singapore Airlines and Tata Sons have decided to merge Air India and Vistara to create a new giant in the aviation industry. Singapore Airlines will invest more than 2,000 crore rupees and pick up a 25% stake in the combined entity. So how will the combined entity stack up against the likes of Indigo and others? Madiha Mujawar, who broke that story, joins us now with more. Madiha. Yes, in fact, just picking up on what you said, and Mark Martin, let me address that issue with you. Singapore Airlines has come around, is back on the table and has decided to ink the deal. And I think it's instructive to look at what Singapore Airlines has said in its disclosure to the Singapore Stock Exchange. It acknowledges the fact that Vistara has been loss-making, and if it needs to scale up in order to achieve its goal of network efficiency to reach profitability, it faces challenges in scaling up amidst severe competition in the Indian aviation market, and hence Singapore Airlines deciding to go forward with this merger and also addressing another crucial aspect, which is capital infusion, much needed capital infusion for Air India, Mark.
Hi, Shireen. Thanks for having me today. The interesting part is the writing was always on the wall. Back in 2000 and 2001, Tata SIA came together to make a bid for Air India, and this has been something which has been there for the last at least 22 years. So they're both coming together to acquire and come together and run Air India is not something which is new. It's been on the game plan. It has been on the playbook. With Vistara, I think it's great to see Singapore Airlines accept and admit that Vistara per se has been an utter disaster from day one. The airline has not worked. They've had a gross identity crisis. They've had a product crisis. They really didn't know how to market it. They've had a disastrous strain and chain of leadership and CEO and management. And I don't think there's any great shakes in merging it. I think this was pretty much an aggressively desperate move, and this had to be done. Now, with respect to where do we go forward, it's all good to see that Air India create a formidable airline network, and I think this falls in a game plan, Shireen, because Air India will focus on running a dedicated international operation while the Vistara arm, and we don't know whether the Vistara arm will be called Vistara or Air India, that would be a domestic airline, and so there will be a very good synergistic relationship between the two. My bigger concern here, Shireen, is who controls the driving seat, who runs it, who controls the board. With 25% stake at $250 million, I think that's a ridiculously low fee for Air India. It's highly undervalued. But on the flip side is, what are we going to see in terms of managing and running the airline on a day-to-day basis? Because I think we all know running Vistara has been a major challenge for SIA, and now does that madness come over to Air India? Is that going to be a challenge? Air India already has acquired, it has taken over a CEO who's been from the Singapore Airlines cadre. So it's not all buoyant and it's all not hunky-dory. It's certainly rough, and I think they're going to have to iron out a whole loads of issues over the next couple of months until March 2023.
Yes, the road ahead is never as smooth sailing as one imagines it to be. There will be several challenges, but this is a significant first step in the revival plan, as Mr. Bhargav was also pointing out. Mr. Bhargav, just addressing that issue that Mark raised, in terms of holding 25% is what Singapore Airlines will hold in the combined entity, so it's clear majority rests with the Tatas. They've already brought in a new CEO from the Singapore Airlines cadre, was looking after Scoot. Campbell Wilson is currently in the driver's seat of Air India. If we were to map out the next steps now, of course, the regulatory approval, CCI, is going to be a big one. By the way, do you expect any issues on that front, any roadblocks on that front, Mr. Bhargav, of a fairly tough operating environment? But of course, we will have to wait to see how this plays out. It's good to have disagreement. I'm glad that you disagree with Mark on Vistara's performance. But Mark, I want to come back and talk about the flight path from here on. So one, of course, is the Air India Vistara merger, but there's also the other aspect of the Air Asia Air India Express, the low-cost arms of the Tata Group. That simplification and that consolidation also underway at this point in time. So the Tatas do have their hands full.
Yeah, Shireen, I think from the start, AirAsia and Vistara, the joint venture airlines, have been a sheer disaster. And it's facts and actuality has proven everybody over the last 5 to 7 years. So a lot of these steps, this isn't any great step up for both airlines. They both have had financial issues. And I'm going to correct Jitendra. And I don't blame Jitendra because he is an old Air India romantic, and I don't justifiably so. But Jet Airways was an airline which was in profits, and what turned out later was everybody's guess. But from a strategic and a broader perspective, I think the bigger question here is how is it going to be funded? And let's be honest, the Tatas have been part of even worse turnarounds. I mean, Tata Steel was turned around from being a loss-making company to being a global company today. So similarly, Tata Motors. So I don't think the Tatas are desperate for Singaporean money or anything. I think this is more of a strategic step, which is going to go a long way. My bigger concern is, as you rightly pointed out, CCI. To what extent is Singapore Airlines going to be controlling Air India? How strong is the control going to be? How aggressive is Air India going to be used as a special purpose vehicle to attack Gulf carriers? Is Air India going to be used as a secret weapon to go after European and Southeast Asian airlines? What's the bigger game plan? That's the point. This isn't about going to, what JRD Tata said 50 years ago, and God bless his soul. I think this is more relevant to where does Singapore Airlines feature in the longer air transport strategy of India. India is a sovereign state. India is a vibrant democracy, and with that, a robust air transport service network should function, must function. In a perfect world, I hope it works in unison between Singapore Airlines and Air India, but I think from what we know already, it has been a rough, rocky road with running Vistara. They've had CEOs leave every year. They've had financial issues. They've had AOG issues. Tata Administrative Services has been involved in Tata Vistara joint venture throughout. So it has been rough. And I think going forward, a lot of questions need to be answered. And Air India has no stake in the government, neither does the government has any stake in Air India. It is a private company. It's governed by private rules, and it's governed by CCI and the law. And so the law will have to step in if there is a CCI violation or any violation for that matter, Shireen.
Yeah. No, of course, if there is any question of violation to start with, Mark, and I would imagine that there's been a battery of legal eagles working on this deal to try and look at any possible eventuality or run-in with either the competition regulator or any other regulator. Mr. Bhargav, I'll give you exactly 10 seconds. I know you wanted to jump in, and I'll give you the last word to close the discussion.
One is to be positive and look at the positives that are flowing out of the disinvestment process and Tata's ownership. The other way is to take view, because no one has ever said that it's going to be an easy task for Tata's to revive and ensure that Air India thrives in the market and gathers it. But look at the sense of pride that will come to the Indians. India originating traffic will be harnessed by Indian carrier. So far, the Southeast Asian carriers and the Gulf carriers have been taking away Indian market. The task is formidable, I admit. Tatas are capable of doing it. I would say yes, they will. It's only a question of a couple of years. It's been 10 months since they regained control of Air India. Give them time, and one can look at the kind of decisions that have been taken thus far. Flights have been announced, expansion of flights to Europe and United States of America, two major markets. The Southeast Asian market, Gulf markets, are being taken care of by the other Indian carriers. But there is no other carrier barring Air India which is flying to Europe, United States of America, Australia, Japan, etc. So that's the market, and Tata's own Air India is on right track. Mark Martin, I'll see you 6 months later and then question and say, look, what we said on Fiend's program On
I hope
29th
that's
of November,
that's
is
what I
what
hope
we are
that's
saying
over.
in the month of June.
We would love to have you,
2023.
Mark and Mr. Bhargav, we'd love to have you back here in 6 months' time to debate and discuss which one of you stands vindicated. But for this evening, appreciate you joining us here on the News Center to take us through what you make of the big news that's coming from the Indian aviation market, and that is the story of Tata Sons and Singapore Airlines coming together to merge Vistara with Air India by 2024. That's it then on this edition of News Center. We'll take a break. More coming up. Don't go anywhere.